want to give them the resources to make them be happy, to make them look after their family, and to make them survive. And that is the reason why, even in Region 9, we have found that our local nurses are terminating their contracts and they're heading to other pastures, way over the trees, way into other colder countries. So how can you say you recognize them? I would say we are punishing our workers, our health workers, and the workers in general in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to examine the proposed Nurses and Midwife Act of 2022. This bill, I note, is described as one to make provision for the registration and regulation of nurses, midwives, nursing assistants, and specialist nurses, and for related matters. Mr. Speaker, at a glance, one would get an impression that this matter at hand is perfunctory, but after examining the details, it becomes clear that this proposed act is of utmost importance for the nation as a whole. From research, I have found that generally, the primary purpose of such a council is to protect the public health and welfare by ensuring that safe and competent midwifery care is provided by licensed nurses and midwives. The council sets standards for the education of the practitioners and ensures that licenses are only granted to nurses and midwives who keep their knowledge and skills current and relevant and uphold the ethics of the profession. Mr. Speaker, the proposed act states that the Council of Nursing and Midwifery shall be a body corporate, but drops at giving a description of this, which is normally that it may enter into contracts, hold property, maintain bank accounts, and be sued in the name of the council. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the function of the council, I do propose that Section 4B could have reads, establish standards of education, training, conduct, and performance for nursing personnel, and to ensure that the maintenance of those standards are modified to read, establish standards of education, training, and I add remuneration, conduct, and performance for nursing personnel, and to ensure the maintenance of those standards. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, in Guyana, the core issue in the problem is normally ignored. In this instance, the bill is seeking to create top-class professional nurses, but expect them to continue to labor for starvation salaries. Thus, Mr. Speaker, I humbly request that Section 4B be modified for the representatives of the nurses to make proposals to the government, the kind of remuneration that will keep our nurses in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, to continue to bury our heads in sand and hope the problem will go away would only force our nurses to go away from our shores to serve other countries because of the need to survive and to make living better for their families. Mr. Speaker, I note with concern in Section 6 that the Council shall consist of 15 members appointed by the Minister, and those positions are listed. However, Mr. Speaker, I note that there is no specific reference to any member representing the people of the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, please allow me to say that Guyana is not only the low coastal plain. Mr. Speaker, I wish to propose that Section 6G reads as follows. 4 members nominated by the Chief Nursing Officer as follows. 1, 2 registered nurses with 1 originating from and practicing in a hinterland region, and 2 nursing assistants with 1 originating from and practicing in a hinterland region. This is to get the input of the hinterland people. Mr. Speaker, Section 1 reads, the members who are not ex officio shall hold office for a period of 2 years and shall not be eligible for reappointment or re-election. Mr. Speaker, I wonder if this was a typographical mistake. Such an important body definitely needs institutional memory. And if a member performs well, he or she should not be thrown out with the baby water. Mr. Speaker, Section 34(4) states that a license issued under Section 3 is valid for the current year in which it is issued and expires on the 31st December of that year. Mr. Speaker, this proposal is not appropriate for Guyana. Those of us who know the difficulties associated with logistics in the hinterland cannot support this. Mr. Speaker, I do propose that this period be extended to 2 years. Even Jamaica, that does not have our challenges, has a period of 2 years for the validity of the license. Mr. Speaker, under Part 5, Offenses and Penalties, Section 44, it states, subject to Section 34(5), any person who practices nursing and midwifery in Guyana without being registered and holding a valid license, or B, any specialty of nursing without being registered as a specialist nurse commits an offense and shall be liable on summary conviction to a fine of $500,000 and imprisonment to 12 months. Mr. Speaker, this act should also have the ability to promote a caring, culturally sensitive, and ethically sound environment in which health services are provided. Mr. Speaker, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples recognizes the dual reality of many indigenous people live in 2 worlds. In one world, they hold fast to their cultural traditions, beliefs, and values. The other world is that of a colonizing nation, and it is where many indigenous people go for their health care. This is Article 24 of UNDRIP is essential to understanding these health rights, and it states, 24(1), indigenous peoples have the right to their traditional medicines and to maintain their health practices, including the conservation of their vital medicinal plants, animals, and minerals. Indigenous individuals also have the right to access, without any discrimination, to all social and health services. And 24(2) says, indigenous individuals have an equal right to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. States shall take the necessary steps with a view to achieving progressively the full realization of this right. Mr. Speaker, with one stroke of the pen, the culture of the indigenous people is rendered to be unlawful and useless. Mr. Speaker, for centuries, the indigenous people practiced their methods of midwifery and traditional healing. Today, in most indigenous communities, there exists traditional midwives and healers. Will these midwives and healers be subject to the wrath of the law as defined in this act? Mr. Speaker, please allow me to propose that these traditional healers be recognized and registered by the village councils and the appropriate authorities in the indigenous villages, and that a policy and program be developed to allow these indigenous practitioners the scope to function. I was told before I came to speak here, that this is already in train, and let us hope that it will be developed further. Also, Mr. Speaker, I wish to propose that when a registered or specialist nurse reasonably holds the view that an emergency exists which gives rise to a serious risk of danger to life or health of a person, and no medical practitioner is available to attend to such an emergency, the registered or specialist nurse shall take necessary action to the best of his or her ability. And this is so appropriate for our hinterland regions, where there are times when you wouldn't even find a health worker, in the village because she has gone to look after somebody miles away. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I wish to commend all who have worked to bring the bill to the level it currently stands. Clearly, lots of work were done. But ask that the proposed changes I have made, especially related to our hinterland and its representation, um, be allowed at some time in the future. Mr. Speaker, I wish in closing to thank our medical workers for the sacrifices that they have made and the care they have given us, our children, and especially during the COVID pandemic. And we say a great thank you. And God bless you. And we know that when APNU AFC is back in the government seat, you shall be getting your just rewards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member Mr. Henry. The Honorable